Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Ireland Chapter of PMI series of lunchtime webinars. Today we're delighted to have R Lambert join us. Good morning, Lee. I think it's quite early in the morning for you at the moment.
It is.
So guys, I think you're familiar with me. This is Katrina Collins speaking. I'm the events director and I'm hosting the webinar today. And we're going to have Lee speak to us on the pandemic and the merits of a PPM and remote working. So I'll draw your attention to the fact that Lee has actually joined us before in Ireland at a number of our conferences. Lee is actually one of 70 PMI Fellows that the PMI internationally has bestowed the merit upon, and you can actually see his merit behind him if you have the video with you. And he is also one of the founders of the PMP, and we have almost 1,000 PMP certified members here in the Irish chapter, so it's quite a popular certification here with our members. So today, perhaps it's not too bold a statement to make that this global pandemic, which has provided us unusually with some opportunities, and one of those opportunities is to prove that you don't have to go to the office to be successful. So I know this question has actually come up quite a bit for our audience. In previous webinars, we've recently done one on remote working and how to manage remotely when you're managing a team. And a lot of the times the questions that came up were around, will working from home become the new normal? Will companies finally realize that working remotely can be a positive? So today Lee is actually going to talk to us about why and how the implementation of a project portfolio management approach will enable a business to continue operating even when the building is empty. So you might take notes today to chat to your managers if you're talking about the long-term discussion about the merits of remote working. As usual, before I hand over to Lee and let him take the floor, I do want to say a quick word, as always, about menti.com. So Lee again has kept a little bit of time for us at the end of the webinar to take some questions and take some feedback as well from the audience. So if you guys can, as usual, grab your phone, go to menti.com and use the code 611116. There's a lot of ones in it this week, folks, so it's 611116. So grab your phone, go to menti.com, type in that code. We've got our usual couple of questions for you. We are looking to get some feedback from you on what kind of webinars you would like subjects to be covered in the future, and also some feedback on how you think the Ireland chapter can help you in the current time as well. So if you can answer those questions for us as well, we'll take that feedback into the chapter and into our planning for events in the upcoming year, 2020 and 2021. So Lee, without further ado, I am going to hand over to you. We are delighted to have you with us here. So let me just change over to you guys. So as usual, that'll just take us a second or two to do the handover, and then Lee will take it away with his presentation.
Thank you, Katrina. I appreciate your introduction. It was almost exactly as I wrote it, so I think you did a good job on that. Sometimes you always have to, you have to help people so that so they make sure that they understand what's important and what isn't important. And this particular topic is extremely important for those of us who are actually doing work, not senior level management. They do their thing, but we do work. Project people do work. And this pandemic has really opened up some opportunities to take advantage of the systems capability that exists today. Now, I want to tell you, I've been in this business now over 50 years. When I started, we were using an abacus to figure out how we were going to do things, but now everything's automated. We have the capability to do things in a different way. And what's happened with the pandemic, and as horrible as it is, and as devastating as the death toll has been rising regularly, we need to look at the silver lining. And in this case, the silver lining is if we have prepared our project work appropriately, meaning consistently, I suppose, with the PMBOK or any other document that you use that gives you guidance on how to do project management effectively, the one thing that we have that we can use is our information that we have created. Now you must understand that in order to do that, you've got to you've got to do some things in advance. I have the honor, I should say, of working with Cora Systems in Ireland in doing some investigative work in terms of what the PPM could do and should do. And through that process, I've really become an addict to the idea of a PPM. I think it answers the questions, it cures the ills that we have in regards to managing our projects more effectively. So if you think about it from that standpoint, when we talk about a PPM, we're talking about digital transformation. That's a hot topic these days. I see webinars on digital transformation all the time, and I'll just cut to the chase. It ain't cheap. Digital transformation costs money. So if you look at it and you say, well, if I'm going to invest that kind of money, I ought to clearly understand what my return on that investment is going to be. So I have to look at it from the standpoint of management has to realize it's big, it's huge. If I'm going to integrate all of my data, that means that I have to integrate all of my data. And in order to do that, of course, you have to have a couple of things. You have to have clarity in terms of the work that's going to be done. You have to have a systems capability that can sort information vertically, horizontally, any way that you want to slice and dice information. And that impacts almost every area in the organization. So when an organization is considering the implementation of a PPM, they really have to realize what kind of an investment they're making. There's no easy way. You can't go halfway with a PPM. You're either going to do it and do it right, or you're not going to be able to take advantage of the structure that we've put into project management. The key to this, the whole key to all of this working is frankly the work breakdown structure and the way that we create the hierarchy of work that needs to be done, whether you're doing agile with a very short period of time, or whether you're doing more predictive or more traditional project management that may be 1 year, 2 years long in duration. The key is having the breakdown of the work in such a way that we can numerically identify that work and put that into an integrated system. When we start to talk about PPMs and we explain it to management who has to make the investment, I mean, as I said, it's not cheap. As we explain it, they need to recognize that we need all of this. We can't do it halfway. A halfway installed PPM is essentially useless. It leaves people out of the information cycle. It makes it so we can't use the information in a way that we have to. I use this slide to make a point. I think I learned years ago that salesmen, people who sell things, realize that one of the things they have to do to capture the sale is create the illusion of need. In other words, I've got to make the person buying the product feel that they must have it, that there's value in it, that it's going to add to what they do. And so we have a vacuum here in the U.S. called the Kirby vacuums. And the Kirby vacuum salesman is trained in this regard. They're trained to create an environment where the buyer is of the opinion they just must have it. They just have to have it. I'll give you a quick example of this. When I first got married, long time ago, we moved into a basement apartment in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we had just moved in, just got married, returned from our honeymoon, and I hear a knock at the door. I go to the door and I look through the people and I can see this person standing outside holding a vacuum with all kinds of hoses around his neck, and I'm thinking I really don't need a vacuum. I just moved into a basement apartment and a vacuum's the last thing I want to invest my money in. But I thought, well, I'll be polite. So I opened the door, and before he started, I said, now wait a minute, let me save you a lot of time. I don't need a vacuum. And I turned and I showed him my floor. They were all tile throughout the basement apartment is tile floor. And I thought, well, that'll shut him down and then we'll be done with this. But no. He says, well, your floor is all tile. I said, that's correct. He said, well, okay, but listen. He said, do you have a bed? And I said, well, of course I have a bed. I'm a newlywed. That was one of the first pieces of furniture we bought, was a good solid bed, brand new one. He said, well, let's go in the bedroom. Now, I hadn't really thought about that kind of a question. I said, oh, the bedroom. He said, yeah, let's go in there. And I said, okay. So we started to walk towards the bedroom, and he said, is your wife here? And I said, yes, she is. And he said, get her. So I said, Carolyn, come with us. This guy wants to go in the bedroom with us. She said, oh, okay, I'll go. And so we go in the bedroom, and he proceeds to tear back the bed covers, to clear back to the bare mattress. Now, this is a brand new Sealy Posturepedic mattress. And he pulls back to the mattress, and he fires that vacuum up. It sounded like a jet engine going through my house. And he takes the hose and runs it over the mattress. Okay. And then he takes out a little filter that he had strategically placed in the hose, rubs on it, and a pile of the most disgusting looking crud you've ever seen piles on my tile floor. And he said, and by now he figured out the decision making hierarchy, and by now he turns to my wife and he says, you see that? She said, yeah. He said, that's your dead skin, and you're sleeping in that every night of your life. Well, within 15 seconds, she said, buy that vacuum. I'm not sleeping in that dead skin every night. So I pulled her aside and I said, Carolyn, listen to what I have to say. If we're decomposing at that rate, we won't need a vacuum in a month or two. And so, but she was convinced. He had created the illusion of need. Well, we bought that vacuum. Okay, now at the time I'm making $375 US a month, and the vacuum cost $600. So more than a month's pay was going into buying a vacuum for tile floors and dead skin on my bed. So he created the illusion. Now here's the key, and this is why this is an important story for PPM. We invested in a vacuum. We didn't need a vacuum, but we were convinced we needed a vacuum. Well, we still have that vacuum. That vacuum has proven to be one of the most beneficial purchases we ever made. So 50 some years, I'm going on 54 years with that vacuum. That's what we've got to do with the PPM. We've got to convince the people who are going to be spending the money to buy a PPM what it's good for. Now, here's what it's good for. It's good for creating data. You got to remember, as a project manager, data is data until you convert it into management decision support information. So PPM, we can generate piles of data like you've never seen before, but if we're not careful, we're not going to use it in a way that adds any value. So now all we've got is something that generates mountains of data. So the structuring, the work breakdown structure, the hierarchy of the project orientation, the ability to identify resource allocation issues all need to be created and structured. That's why it's not the buying of the software that really costs the money. It's the changing of the way we do business in this environment. Now, one of the beauties of it, from my view, is if I do this right, if the organization does it right, the only people that really have to go into an office, have to go into a building every day, are the operations people. They have work they have to do. They can't do that work remotely oftentimes. So they have to go in and maintain and operate the systems that are providing the information we need. For me, I've made a decision that I'm never going into an office again. I've been isolated. I've not left my house in Columbus, Ohio for about 38 days. 38 days without having to go to the office. I've been able to drive everything I needed to drive right from my office at home. And what we find is, we've done some studies in the US because of this move to remote work, is that it costs a company about $28,000 US a year to maintain office space for an individual contributor. So you multiply that by the hundreds of people who go into an office every day and then sit there and do the same thing I'm doing when I'm sitting in my basement, and you begin to see there's some significant benefits for the organization in terms of cost. And the other thing I've found, and I've been doing some surveys in the last couple of weeks, is that the people who are working remotely, I've got a couple of friends who are in the banking business, and they haven't gone into work for over a month. But what they're telling me is they've actually begun to produce more work, to do more work from home in their home office than they do when they go into the office. So there's another benefit to the organization, is that people tend to be committed. We're professionals. We're committed to the work that we do. And so we don't know limits of hours. I mean, I'm a classic example. I mean, it's 7 o'clock in the morning and I'm providing a webinar. That would never happen. But now I can do it on my own time. I can get up and do it whenever I want. So it gives me the freedom to do the work when I want to do the work and maintain a social relationship with my family and still get all the work done. So we've got to realize, if I structure my projects according to the way we suggest you do it as a professional in the project management world, I have the framework for a PPM. I have the ability to use the PPM. Now, what we want to do when we use that is we want to connect everybody. Because the whole idea behind decision support information is a facilitator of communications. So here again, we don't have to be present. I don't have to be physically with you to communicate with you. If I have a link of all the organization, again, I can do it hierarchically, vertically. I can do it across the organization. So all of a sudden, I have the ability to talk to anyone in the organization based on the way I've structured the communication process, the way I've sequenced my work. This could be schedules, this could be resource allocation, it can be any of those forms and formats. It allows me to be in a situation where I can use that information effectively. And what we do with that information, this is another hot topic. There's so many hot topics in project management these days, but this one is everybody's got a dashboard. Now, if I'm going to use a PPM, if I'm going to use a system that identifies and integrates all of the information across the organization, then I need to have dashboards that allow me to then review the status of information and make decisions. Remember, it's decision support, so we want to be able to do that. Well, dashboards are very popular now. Everybody has them. Everywhere I go, yeah, you got a dashboard? Oh gosh, yeah, we got a dashboard. They'll show me the dashboard. It's got the green and yellow and the red and all the numbers, and it's all tied together. Well, that's what you need, except the only difference is, what I've found in my research is that the dashboard tends to not get used as it was intended to be used. If you remember, the dashboard is simply like a traffic light. You got green go, yellow caution, red stop. Okay. Well, if you think about this, the analogy is when you're driving, I don't know if it's that way in Ireland, but in the US, when I'm driving, and I see a green light, then I'm going. I'm going. Then if the light turns yellow, okay, if the light turns yellow, what do you do if you're driving the car? Light turns yellow. Well, you speed up, obviously, to get through the light, and that's what's happening. Is that we're not using the dashboard the way it was intended. So when the data says yellow, that means something's going wrong. It doesn't mean ignore it and just go through it. It means pay attention to it. We don't want it to go red. When it goes red, you get attention. Red on the dashboard usually requires management to get involved. That's the last thing I want as a project manager, is that I want some senior level manager getting involved in my project because the dashboard says red. So use the dashboard, structure your information in a way that allows you to do that effectively. The other big benefit of the PPM approach is that I can do forecasting. I can take the information. Now, the way the saying goes, this is my personal saying, and I've lived by it for almost 54 years in project management, is that whatever happened in the past will continue to happen in the future unless somebody does something about it. So I want to use the information that resides in this very holistic PPM process to predict the future. This is where project managers earn their keep, so to speak, is that we can tell you what the future looks like based on what we've experienced in the past. Now, with the PPM, where we have a fully integrated database, this has incredible power. And anybody that wants to really be successful in project management can become very good at predicting the future and then recommending actions to take if we don't want it to look like that, or things to continue if we do want it to look like that. So you have to be the one that takes the action. Remember, whatever's happened in the past will continue to happen in the future unless you or somebody does something about it. With the PPM implemented, we can predict resource utilization, we can predict procurement actions, we can predict project status in terms of work accomplishment, work breakdown structure based, milestone based. All of that is predictable. Now, the one thing I caution you on, because it's exciting to think about, is that I can tell the future, is that you've got to have enough of the past to make the future be relevant. So my rule of thumb is I need 30% of the data to then project into the future. So 30% of the time, of the money, of the resource utilization, that history then I can use as a basis to project into the future. And that's what management doesn't like, surprises. I'm not sure if you understand that, but if you surprise management, that's not good. So we want to constantly be ahead of the power curve, be ahead of the environment that we have, where we can keep that predictability in a place where I have some control of it. So we want to look at the trending capability. Now you got to remember, this PPM is integrated from the top down. It goes from the highest level of the organization to the lowest level of work package in the projects that are being done in your organization. When it comes to resource allocation and all those issues, the PPM has to be fully integrated. That's why it costs money. It's not easy. It takes time. And I've worked on 4 of these. I've done 4 what we call enterprise-wide applications of project management, and the time it took to do those, the average of the 4 was about 3 years before it became what we consider to be fully mature. So this is an investment of time and money, well worth it. The return on those 4 has been fantastic, but it does take some time. And one of the things you want to be careful of is that there's not a one size fits all. When you get into this business of PPMs, there's lots of them out on the market. I mean, you've got one of the best right there in Ireland with Cora Systems. They've got a fantastic array of products that allows us to do this effectively, but they're all over. I mean, there's lots of them. I don't endorse Cora. I just point out that they have a good capability that I've exercised and utilized and seen that it has value. But when you're being approached by someone, quote, selling a PPM, remember the vacuum story. They're going to try to create the illusion of need. So you got to be very careful that you don't try to buy a one size fits all. If any of you have ever been involved in a SAP implementation, one of the things the SAP salesmen say almost religiously is that, hey, this is an off the shelf. You can just plug and play. And then 3 or 4 years later, it finally doing what they said it would do when you took it off the shelf. So you got to be careful. You've got to understand, you're the key player, by the way. The people that are working at the working level, the project managers and their staff, their related staff, they are the ones that really have to determine what the needs are in terms of information. That can always be vertically integrated or horizontally integrated, but the base information has to be there. So one size doesn't fit all. Each organization has to determine what's important, what is it they really want to do, and how do they really want to use an automated system. And to me, I want to use it in a way I never have to go into work again. If I'm an organization, I run an organization, I'm paying $28,000 a year for every single employee that's taking up office space. I want to figure out a way to stop that. let's have them work from home. That's $28,000 savings per person. All we need to do is make sure we have an information system that enables them to be able to work from home. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about, or as you're suggesting to your people in the organization, what the benefits of a PPM would be. Everybody is a stakeholder. If you stop and think for a minute in an organization, the complexities of organizations make it important to have automated systems capability, because manually collecting that kind of information becomes difficult. So we have to look at it from management's perspective. We have to look at it from operations and facilities. We have to look at it from human resources, training, and salary actions. All of those are stakeholders in a PPM. So it's a fully integrated. So now all of a sudden, we're not just talking about project management. We're talking about organizational structure, where all of the people in the organization, in their small way, are contributing to the execution of projects. And so we've got to be in a position where we can do that. And once we've got the base in place, then we can operate remotely. Then we can operate remotely. I'm doing webinars. I've decided I want to get the word out. I'm doing free webinars because I like doing them, and I think there's an important message. And so I've scheduled about 50 webinars in the next month and a half. And I'm never going to leave my basement office to do this. And I'm going to touch. I figure by the end of the system where I'm implementing these webinars, I will have touched close to 1,000 project management professionals. So if I can do that without leaving the house, are you kidding me? I mean, I used to travel all over the world to do live workshops. Well, I don't have to do that anymore. And if I've got a PPM that supports the information that I'm trying to project onto the screen to show people what to do, then I can do that without ever leaving home. Just don't leave home without it. And if you got a PPM, use it. That's what it's intended for. Now, here's one of the problems, though. Nothing's easy. If it were easy, they wouldn't pay you the big bucks like they do. But so we've got this issue. In this particular slide, my point is one that says you can't teach an old dog new tricks, okay? And the old dog that I'm talking to here is senior level management. Senior level management has not really gotten comfortable with the idea of a PPM, because it's letting go, it's entrusting you and me to work on our own without them giving direction, without them walking by your office every day to see if you're working. It requires trust in the project management people, trusting that they will do the right thing, and using the information that's been available in this PPM approach enables you to do that. You've got to be sincere, you've got to be committed, and you have to have discipline. That's one of the things that we have to really focus on with remote working, is that the individual, you, has to have the discipline to work from home and actually work from home. And get things done that need to be done. Commit yourself to it, even though you're at home, even though your wife or husband is in the room, in and out, your children are hanging all over you. You still got to get the work done. So when we talk about old dog new tricks, this is a big issue. Is trying to get senior level people like me, actually. I mean, I've been around 53 years, and when I was in a corporate structure for about 18 years, I finished my career as Vice President of Staff and Organizational Development for the largest contract research organization in the world. And at the time that I finished up and went out on my own, I don't think I would have trusted to let people go, to trust that people will do what needs to be done, whether I'm around or not. So it does take time. I was guilty of it. Now I'm a convert. And if you've ever seen a convert, you know that they're the most committed people in the world. Those that convert to the idea have found value. They've identified where it could be. Okay. So one of the things I have to do, and this is why I enjoy doing these webinars, is my job is to teach people how to do that effectively, teach people that creating a structure that plugs into an automated processing capability is going to give you the value you need. What I want to do is I want to create the environment with the PPM where there's no limit to what an individual contributor can do regarding the work that they've been challenged to get accomplished. They can immediately identify how they're doing, what the problems are, what the issues are, forecast what the impacts are, and I want to get people to understand that. I want people to recognize how important that particular part of the process is. So teaching, this is really, I mean, I'll be honest with you, this is how I got into project management. I was working at General Electric Company, and they decided, not on their own, the Department of Energy here in the U.S. government said, you will use an earned value system on this particular contract. They didn't have anybody who really knew much about earned value, and so they asked for volunteers to get into a role where we're going to develop procedures and then provide training to the user community. I volunteered, and that was my first real impact in terms of project management. It was in 1973, and I volunteered to become a trainer to teach people how to use project management and to identify what the benefits of project management are. So it's a huge job, and once you know it, once you have understanding of it, then you can, in fact, take advantage of the information base that we've created. And if you look at it from the standpoint of individuals, you don't have to go through this. You see this whole idea of social distancing. I know in Ireland you're having this darn pandemic, same as we are. Hopefully not as dramatic as the impact that we are. But the social distancing thing, this kind of lends itself. There's no real worry about 6 foot spacing when you're in one house and somebody else is in another house. So we built in social distancing by the creation and utilization of a PPM. We don't have to worry about it. We don't have to get together. Now some will say, well, but that takes away the personal touch, and I agree with that. But remember, remotely now we can almost be there. We can get groups of people together, just like we are now. Get groups of people together that are receiving benefits from a PPM, because we can now create that illusion of a meeting, talking about the key issues without ever having to be in the same room with the people that we work with. So we can do that. Now, doesn't replace the social aspect of project management. I'm a big believer in the social aspect, but that really is irrelevant when it comes to PPM, because what we're talking about with PPM is a management process where we're actually making things happen, getting things done, identifying problems, and then resolving them. So we got a built-in social distancing when we're utilizing a PPM approach. Okay. Now, it looked easy in the manual. Now, Katrina tells me that you have almost 1,000 PMPs. Now, remember when I was one of the founders of the PPM, we never in our wildest dreams would have envisioned that there was going to be more than 1 million people in the world that had the PMP certificate, the credential. We never dreamed of that. And so just like we never dreamed of the PMP being so important, so critical, so valuable, the same could be said for PPM. Now we're in the early stages of recognizing the power of PPM, and if you look, it looks easy when you look at it in the manual, and you get your user's manual and you start to. It looks pretty easy. Well, so did the PMP until you sat for the exam. And that hasn't changed. People have to prepare for the exam. Well, this is no different. You have to prepare for utilizing a PPM. You have to be prepared to ask questions about, hey, wait a minute, where's the information about what skill sets I've been using? How many subject matter experts have we applied on this project? Where is that? Where can I find that information? Well, right now you may not be able to. If you implement a PPM and you say, I want to see where all the subject matter experts are working in the organization, what projects they're working on, you got a report. There it is. It's on your desk. Take a look. That's what we want to do. Is it easy? No, it's not easy at all. 4 of them, as I said, 4 of them I've done 3-year average time from start to maturity. Now, maturity means it's incorporated into the life of the project organization. The functional organization is adapted into utilizing the PPM information. And once that's happened, we see the benefit, then we call that mature. So there's a big commitment here. Your role is to help identify exactly what kind of information is going to add value to what you do. You have every right to ask people, how can I get this information? Where does this information come from? So that as we create and implement a PPM, we've covered all of those questions. We know that we can pull out the information that you need in a timely and effective way. So we've got to look at it from that perspective. And what happens is, if you've got a PPM, this is the beauty. It's almost like PMP. Once you have your PMP, everything goes smooth as glass on projects. And if you believe that, I got a vacuum I want to sell you. No, it doesn't go. Having the PMP indicates you know the process, you know the concepts, you know the terms and terminology. Well, it's no different with a PPM. When you're implementing a PPM, it's going to take time for you to get comfortable with its capabilities. Once you've done that, and once we've saved $28,000 per person by clearing a building out and not having to lease another one, then all of a sudden the benefits of a PPM, which are really invisible benefits in a way, because organizations don't think that it costs them to have an office for you. But it does. Again, in U.S. study, $20,000 a person. So we want to get to where we can create that value of a PPM that demonstrates to senior level managers who have to make the decision to invest the money in a PPM what the real value of that process is. I wish it was this easy. I wish we could put you in one side of the booth and you come out a superhero on the other side. That ain't going to happen. But what we want to make sure we understand is that I can create an environment where I look like a superstar because I learned how to utilize the information that resides in a PPM. How often have you said to yourself, well, if I had all the information, I could do that? Well, if you find yourself in that situation, then you're saying to yourself without knowing it, you need a PPM. You need an integrated process that allows you to find that information you need to make better, more informed decisions. So that's something we have to focus our attention on and realize what I need to do if I'm going to stay home, if I'm never going to work again, then I got to know that I have everything I need to get my job done. And that's where that investment of time and effort comes up front, is creating that framework for the information to be processed in a timely way. Now, you got to realize that we all have to make sacrifices. And there's no free lunch. I mean, there's just no free lunch. Somebody always wants something for that quote free lunch. Well, and from our standpoint, the free lunch comes in the fact that we need to invest our serious effort in helping the organization understand what the implemented PPM is going to be capable of doing. We have to invest time. We can't just sit back and say, well, tell us what you got. I want to tell them what we need. So it's a matter of the difference between wants and needs. We want a lot of things, but we only need some things. So we not only have the data that lives in a PPM, but we also can constrain data that doesn't have any value. So if you go back to that mountain of data, I'm going to sort and sift that. So out of that mountain, I might pull 30% of the data comes out in the form of information support from a decision-making standpoint. The rest of it is in there. It stays in there. But we have to know it is in there. But we only want to use what we need to use to be effective. So let me give you a little example. When I moved up to Richland, Washington, which is in the northwest of the U.S., I was recruited from GE to go and implement an enterprise-wide application. And one of the things that I had to be responsible for was being the liaison between the contractor, which is the Department of Energy, and the organization that I worked for. So my role was to deliver the reports down to the headquarters office and then explain them to the project control officer. Okay, so I got there in August, and it was too late to be involved in the preparation of the monthly report, but I still had the responsibility to deliver it. So I told my administrator, I said, bring in the report. Let's go down to the project control office and meet the guy and give him a little overview of what's going on. He said, okay, fine. He went away, and about 5 minutes later, he comes back in my office pushing a hand truck. And on that hand truck was a pile of the perforated computer paper. Some of you probably aren't old enough to remember that, but it was almost 6 feet tall. It was unbelievable. And I looked at it and I said, "What in the heck is that?" He said, "Oh, that's our monthly report to the Department of Energy." I said, that's ridiculous. I mean, this is a $300 million a year organization, and there's no way you need that much information to run it effectively. I said, "Oh, they really enjoy it. They like it. They've been asking for it for a long time." I said, "Okay, so let's go." So we went down. I got in the office, and after the niceties and the how you doing and good to see you, then I said, we need to talk about the report. And he said, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm so happy to get this report. It's been so useful for us." And I said, but what is it?" And he said, what do you mean, what is it? You brought it. It's the monthly report. I said, no, I know. What is it? Why are you having so much detail? Why do you need that kind of information? He said, "Oh, I've got 12 project control officers. They swear by that organizational information. It lets them manage their respective divisions within the laboratory effectively." And I said, "Well, there's no way you need that." So I said, "I'll make a deal with you. If I can prove to you you're not using all that information, will you be willing to raise the level of detail?" We were at the 7th level of a work breakdown structure. He said, "Absolutely, but we love it. In fact, we were thinking about asking for more." I said, "No, that's not happening." So I'm back, and now September comes. Now I get to prepare the report. I can't change the report. Our bet's in effect, but I can't change it. I got to prove he's not using it before I can't change. So the report comes in for September. I salt it a little bit. Now it's still 6 feet tall, but I salt it with some information that if anybody's actually reading it, I'm probably going to get a phone call, and I send it on down. Nothing. Okay, that confirms they're not using it. So I raise the level, do the same thing the next month, nothing. Finally, I say, "Well, look, I got to put an end to this. We got work to do." So again, the last time, by now it's down to about a foot. Okay, from 6 foot to a foot. I salt the last one, except this time I salted it with some information about his family, his mother and his sister, and I sent it on down. 5 minutes had passed when it got there, and my phone was ringing. Now, this was in about 1978, so we didn't have caller ID, but I knew who it was. I said, "Yeah, Frank, what's up?" He said, "I just got this report." And I said, "I got to tell you," he said, "I don't know what the heck you're trying to pull here. I don't know who you think you are, but you're not going to get away with this. This is beyond anything I could have ever get." I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "I'll tell you the problem, Lee." He said, "This report's been down here about 10 minutes now. It's sitting on my desk. I've been sitting here looking at it. And let me ask you this, Lee." He said, "Didn't this report used to be a lot thicker?" He still hadn't read the report. Okay. When I left there in 1981 to go to Columbus, Ohio, where I am now, they were reporting to the Department of Energy with a 24-page report. So it went from 6 feet to 24 pages. This is a danger. I want to make sure you understand there's a danger in having the power to generate that much data lends itself to abuse. So we've got to carefully structure the way we're going to do things to avoid that mountain of data and focus on decision support information. So it really ties into this idea that we can manage risks. We can manage those things that have impact on the project by forecasting into the future. So just like this domino example, you let that first domino fall, and you've seen these. I've seen where the thousands of dominoes are prepared. They tap one domino and it shuts down every single domino in the chain. That's the issue that we have to deal with. We have to understand what the connections are. So not only do I integrate the statistical data, I integrate the scheduled data so that we're scheduling, we can understand what the impacts on critical paths are, what the impacts on resource distribution across the organization will be. We've got to be effective in how everything ties together, not just your individual project. You got to remember your project fits into a grander scheme of things. That's why PMI has really emphasized in the past few years the idea of strategy. When we went to the talent triangle, we integrated risk into that by integrating strategy. What's the strategy the organization is trying to accomplish, and do all the projects support the strategy? So there's method to the madness, and we look at it in a way that it has to be organized so that people can get their work done and know what the impact on other parts of the organization will be. And remember, you're doing this from home. You don't have to be in the office to get this kind of stuff done. Now, the problem is you got to have your bosses on board. Remember, I said early on, the investment of time and effort is critical. The idea that we can do this without management support is ridiculous. It's an invalid idea. I need management to do it. So if management's not behind it, you're going on a train into a dead-end wall. And that's what we want to avoid. We want to be integrated as a group. I want to have a project organization that is linked together. So when Bob's project starts to slip, I can immediately identify the impact on my project or on the resource pool owner's utilization of resources. So we can identify skill set capabilities in this same PPM system. So now we got subject matter experts and we got subject matter zeros, SMEs and schmoes. We can identify who those people are and what the impact on my project will be. If I've planned the project utilizing subject matter experts, and the next thing I know, I'm being assigned subject matter zeros, meaning entry-level people, I have to be able to identify what the impact on the project and or the organization will be by this disconnect, this misapplication of resource capability. So I got to have bosses to buy in. I have got to have bosses that really understand what it is, understand how the PPM actually empowers them to do a much better job of managing the short term and anticipating the long term. So this is something we have to pay attention to and get the boss involved. Make sure the boss understands the investment and what the return on the investment is. If the return is more work with less problems, better utilization of resource capabilities, better utilization of facilities, and all the other things it takes to support a project, it's a lot more than a project plan. So we want to be able to get the bosses involved. They need to see a return on their investment if they're going to get any advantage out of this process. So what we want to do is we want to get into a position where we can analyze the information so that it doesn't look like luck. I've told people in the past, people are getting ready to take the PMP exam, and they'll say, well, I hope I get lucky. And I said, well, if you're hoping to get lucky, then there's probably a good chance you're not going to pass. And 40 to 50% of the people who sit for that exam the first time do not pass, and some don't go back for another shot at it. It's too intimidating for some. But if there's a 40 to 50% fail rate, it's going to take a lot more than luck to get people to become PMP. So I use this example to point that out. This is an example. I'm sure you've heard of Tiger Woods. I talk to some people in Ireland all the time, are big golf fans, and I live on the course, the memorial course of Jack Nicklaus. And over the years, I go to his tournament. Has a big tournament every year. Over the years, I go to his tournament, and Tiger Woods has won that tournament 6 times. Now, this was before he sort of had a falling out with his wife, and his personal life kind of went all the heck. But the fact of the matter was, he's won 6 times. And so I use this example because Tiger never planned on luck. He didn't rely on luck to win the tournaments. So in this example, I want to point out that this actually happened pretty much like I'm relating it to you. He was leading the tournament, final round. He gets on the 13th, hits his drive. The drive hits the trunk of a tree, bounces off a rock, hits a groundhog hole, bounces on a turtle in the creek, and rolls into the cup. Wow. So he went on to win the tournament. Of course, at the end of the tournament, all the paparazzi are gathering around. They want to interview Tiger. And the first question they get, he said, Tiger, what about that 13th hole? He said, that was unbelievable the way that happened on the 13th. What do you have to say about that? And here's what he said, and this is what you want to say. If you're using a PPM effectively, here's what he said. Well, it's pretty much the way I planned it. Pretty much the way I planned it. In other words, there was no luck involved, there was skill. So if you've got a PPM, my view is, if I've got a PPM, if I'm organizationally running an organization that's conducting projects, and I have a PPM, there's going to be no luck involved. There's going to be skill involved, and I'm going to use the information that exists within that system to accomplish that. So don't look for your lucky number. This is something that is just not going to happen. If you want to hope for luck, then go play the lottery or go gambling. Go to one of the casinos. That's luck. But we don't want to believe in luck. We want to believe in skill. We want to understand what it is we're capable of accomplishing, utilizing this integrated PPM approach to getting our work done. We can eliminate voluminous reports. We can look at online report information. We don't have to have everything in hard copy. And so I'm doing away with luck and integrating skill into the process with the data that I have available. And you're going to start to realize when you do this, there's a lot of data that's available that doesn't add any value to what you do. So you want to make sure that you're using value add data. Now, how much does this cost? I pointed out early on that digital transformation is expensive. Now, if you're not doing it, you're going to be left in the dust. If you're a project manager or work in a project management environment and you ignore or disregard the value of a PPM, it won't be long before you're an antique. I've seen this happen personally. You know, as we all know, the advent of Agile has caught fire like the brush fires in Australia. Man, you can't stop it. It's everywhere. And if you choose to ignore Agile in favor of the predictive model of doing things, the old way, if you will, what I've learned, and I've had to adapt myself, is that that's the new way. And if you don't adopt to the new way, then you're left in the dust. And so the PPM is the new way of information support. Decision support information is the output of a PPM. It doesn't get projects done. The more data doesn't get project done. Projects get done by people who utilize the information that resides in that particular PPM. So we want to make sure we look at that in a way that we're willing to invest. Now, from an individual project manager's perspective, your contribution is key because you're the one having to make decisions. You're the one that's on an expedited schedule that you have to determine what's the benefit of adding more resources. And maybe when you add the more resources, you find out what actually makes the project go longer. But we want to have that information that we can play what if scenarios. We can look at it from a forecasting and trending standpoint. So the PPM is the future. There's no question about that. That jury's not out. They've already rendered their verdict, and that is PPM is critical to the success of people in an organization dealing with projects. Okay, that present is the end of my formal presentation. We're gonna kind of open it up to questions and turn it back over to Katrina, and let's see what we have in the way of questions. I'll be happy to respond.
Great, so I'm just going to move the video off that screen there and share. Okay, guys, thank you very much. So we had, it's interesting actually, Lee, so thank you very much for that. And it's really interesting to see some of the feedback because we were talking earlier about the difference between your style in presenting and Greta's style in presenting, because Greta presented for us last week and she presented on the topic of program management. But a lot of people here actually have just given some lovely feedback with regards to the slides. One person would like to know, how do you get your cartoons drawn up? I don't know if you're going to be willing to share that information, but
I will share that. I get that comment all the time. I hire retired editorial cartoonists from newspapers. And so what I do is I give them the message that I want to get out, and they create. The one I've got most recently, I've got about 110 of these. The ones I've gotten in the last few years are just by far and away the most outstanding. But he really is able to take my thoughts, and there's a lot of crazy stuff in there, take my thoughts and convert it into a picture that says 1,000 words. And what I've learned over the years, this is my style, is that pictures really set the stage for communicating a message. And many people are now becoming enlightened that this is the way to go. I don't do PowerPoint. I don't do bullets. And I know Greta and I have talked about it. She does a lot of bullets and a lot of words, and she's trying to see how she can modify that to be a little bit more graphical in the way she presents her material, because she's got a fantastic message that can be portrayed in a graphical way.
Yeah, it was a great session, definitely. So we do have a couple of questions for you here, Lee, and I'll try and pick them out because there's a mix here of feedback and questions. So maybe, Lee, I think this is an interesting one. How does a PMO go from being a department to being company-wide? So we would have a lot of this, maybe examples of where the PMO is maybe within the IT department, or maybe within a marketing department, or it might be linked to a manager, but it doesn't seem to have an umbrella over the whole company. So
yeah, that happens all the time. One of the reasons that happens is management begins to realize what a big commitment it is, but they're not willing to take that step. They're not willing to have that reporting directly to a senior VP, or and so on almost every case I've seen, they start out in the beginning they were putting them under the finance organization, which I guess made some sense because projects cost money. So I suppose then we went to putting it under the qualities. I mean, it moves around, okay? And so what happens is the PMO, while its intention is good and while they're supporting it by structurally putting it in the organization, they're still isolated from the fact that it's an enterprise-wide application. They apply it to projects by projects without integrating it with all the rest of the organization. One of the areas that in some of the organizations I work with that really becomes critical is the procurement area, where we're dealing with purchased goods and services. If that's not integrated into an enterprise system, you can get into significant problems. But so what happens is the PMO works as hard as it can to show, hey, we can do projects more effectively, and pretty soon it's begun to realize, but we don't have quality information, we don't have the HR information, we need to integrate the rest of the story into the process, and then they make the decision. Now if you're buying a PPM, one of the things that they're going to tell you right now from the top, from the get-go, is this has to be a totally integrated organization approach, that we can't isolate one leg of the organization and hope that the value is received. So you've got to benefit from the PMO, do the things a good PMO does, and eventually it begins to be recognized by senior level management. Hey, if a little of this is good, imagine what a lot of it would do, and it begins to get elevated. In some organizations, they report directly to the president of the organization. So it really depends on the foresight of senior level management. Sometimes you have to prove it before they'll make that step.
And it does seem, Lee, that there is a couple of questions or comments around what you did discuss in the slides, which is getting people to read the report. So like a person has made the comment, you know, the reports are only useful and the data is only good if they are read and then acted on. So it does seem to be, there's a couple of comments about that, about how do I get management to review the reports? Do you have any tips?
Yeah, I mean, the way I did it is the way I would do it if I were working in that world today, is if the organization generates a report that goes up the chain, if you will, to higher level management, if they're not really using that information, then why would you bother them with that? And so, unfortunately, I mean, you got to take some risks in life, but so you send reports up without information that you don't think they're need or they're using, and all of a sudden you don't get any comments. That confirms they're not using it. That confirms it's not necessary. And that's the danger of a PPM, to be honest with you, is that it's so powerful. It has such a significant capability that if you don't have some control over the level of reporting and the complexity of reporting, it will die of its own weight. There'll begin to be so much information that it's actually counterproductive to what we're hoping to achieve.
Wow, there's a lot to it. So we have actually come up to our hour, Lee. So like I said, a lot of comments from people enjoying the style and picking up some tips from it, which is great. So Lee, thank you so much for speaking to us today. I think, like you said, in the time that we're in right now, if somebody is working in a PMO or in a PPM environment, now's the time to resell the benefit of it to your senior management effectively. And hopefully you'll have picked up some tips in here that will be of use in the next conversations that we have with our own managers. So for everyone on the webinar, we're winding up now. We will auto record your PDU for you, so that will go towards your certification. And the recording will also be available as usual in the next couple of days up on our website. So we have a couple of webinars to go. We have 6 more up until the end of June. Then we're going to take a break and we'll be back with more webinars in September. So we want to remind everybody again to go to our calendar of events to register, but also don't forget to use projectmanagement.com and the webinars there. There's a good mix of international webinars available to anyone that's a member, and that will be available to you all the way through the summer months as well. So that's it. Lee, thank you so much for speaking to us. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll look forward to having you on another webinar in the future, I hope.
Good, I'll do that as well. I enjoyed it very much, and if somebody got one little tidbit, I'm happy.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you so much. Thank you guys, and we'll talk to you again next week.